Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show. Listen, Scotty thinks something is going on, and he's tired of it. He can't take that. That's the ultimate betrayal for him. But see, let me tell you something. This happens more than you think. Because you have a female, you have this woman that sees the big homie as the power, the strength. See, that day that she asked him, what did the big homie mean? What did that title mean? And he told her, it means that I'm the one that tells everybody what to do. See, the big homie knew what he was saying when he said that. He knew what he was saying. He was letting her know, I'm in charge of your man. I tell your man what to do. Simple as that. And by Scotty not saying anything or not pushing back against that, it made her see the big homie as somebody with strength. And then when Scotty convinces her to let the big homie sit in the room while they made love, she looks at him through that sheet and she sees that he's watching her as well. It was something about that encounter that made her see the big homie as somebody with strength and Scotty was somebody without it. Even though her heart was with Scotty, her curiosity had started to peak about the big homie, Kay. So when Scotty called her, he decided that he would confront her about this because this was bothering him. This was something that was getting to him because he did not understand how somebody could say that they love you in one breath and then in the other have a wandering eye. Because he felt it. He knew something was wrong. So he asked her, he said, what is going on? There's something different about you. And she played coy with him about it, but she knew exactly what he was talking about. She said, what are you saying? What is going on? What are you talking about? Why are you asking me these questions under these circumstances? Because he was calling her on the state phone. And he shouldn't be talking to her like this. But see, his emotions had got the best of him. So he's got her on the phone and he's talking to her and she's saying, look, I don't understand what you're saying. I don't understand where you're going with this, but my heart is with you, and that's where it's always going to be. But she knew. She knew what he was saying. She knew what he was getting to. And he said, look, I'm not going to watch someone I love leave me like this. I'd rather leave first. And when he said that, it felt like somebody had stabbed her in the heart. She said, no. That's not what I want. He said, tell me, what do you want? Is there something going on? And she paused for a minute. And she said, I don't know how to tell you this. She said, you don't know how to tell me what? She said, that day when we were making love, the big homie was watching. And she said, I looked back and I saw him watching us. And she said, it turned me on. And in that moment when she said that to Scotty, Scotty's heart sank. He sat there and he listened to her go over this story. And the more she talked about it, the more he could hear in her voice that she was excited in that moment. And it hurt him to his heart. He was speechless. And even when she had finished talking, she had to say to him 3 times, are you still there? Scotty, are you on the phone? Do you hear me? He had no words. He had no words. So when he mustered up the strength to say something, he said, look, I think it's best that we take a break. And she said, how do we do that? How do we do that? Because she was trying to imply to him so that he would understand without her saying it, I'm going to see you every day. How do we take a break? And eventually he caught it and he said, look, I'm just going to pull back until you decide what you want. You make up your own mind. She said, what about what it is that I'm doing? He said, you have to decide on all of that, what you want to do. You make up your own mind. But I'm not finna stand here and watch what I think's going to happen. You have to do that on your own. You go your way and I'm going to go mine. And her heart broke. Her heart broke. And the next sound she heard was him hanging up the phone. And this was the first time since she had met him and they had declared their love for one another that he did not say, I love you. before he hung up or before he left her presence. And she knew that he was hurting. She knew that he would never, ever hang up that phone without saying that he loved her. It had never happened before. So she knew that this was serious. And she lay in the bed that night and she cried because she didn't know what her next move was going to be. So she got up the next day and she went to work. And when she got to work, she had on shades. And when she got back and she sat at her desk, the first one at her desk was Kay, the big homie. And when he got down to the desk, he said, "How you doing today?" She said, "I'm doing," in a somber tone. He said, "Is something wrong?" She replied to him, "Everything is wrong." And he said, "Tell me about it." She said, "Scotty suspects that I'm up to something. And he told me last night that he was pulling back." So Kay, he stood there at the desk and he said, "Is it because of me?" And she said, "I don't know. He thinks something is up." And he said, "Well, what did you tell him?" She said, "I told him that you were watching and that I was watching you watch me and that I got excited about it." And he said, "Why did you tell him that?" She said, "Because I wanted to tell him the truth and I didn't know what else to say in that moment. I didn't want to lie to him like that." She said, "And besides, if I don't tell him the truth now, it's only going to hurt him later." So Kay said, "What do you mean by that?" She said, "I'm not trying to be with you or anything like that, but if he would have found out later, rather than now, that I was thinking that it felt like it would hurt him worse." He said, "Is there anything that I can do?" And she said, "Yeah, just stay away from me. Stay away from me." So in typical gang leader fashion, he said, "What about the move?" And she said, "I already put it in the spot. I'll keep doing that for both of you, not just you, for both of you, until I figure out what I'm going to do. But for now, just stay away from me." He said, "I'll do that." He said, "I'm going to go talk to him." She said, "I can't tell you what to do, but I don't think he's going to listen to you either." And he said, "He'll listen to me." And she said, "No, he won't. Not when he's like this. It don't matter about you being the big homie. He ain't looking at you like the big homie now." And he said, "Well, I'm still going to go talk to him man to man. He was a man before he was part of this, and so was I." So Kay, the big homie, went to talk to Scotty. He knocked on the door. He said, "What's up, little homie?" Scotty looked at him, raised up off the bunk. He said, "What's going on, homie? Come on in." So when Kay walked in, he said, "Bless this house." He said, "Look, man, I just finished hollering at Rachel, and I need to talk to you about something and explain some things." So Scotty stood up off of the bunk and he said, "Yeah, you got some explaining to do." He said, "Look, I come in peace, little homie." He said, "But I need you to understand something. I'm not responsible for your woman and how she feels and what she did by looking at me, looking at you." He said, "You got to keep in mind, man, I'm in the penitentiary. And I'm in the room and I'm looking out for you and I hear you in there making love to your woman. I can hear all of the ooh and the ah." And he said, "Yeah, I look. It's been a minute for me. And yeah, I had that in my mind. I had those thoughts. But I understand now how much it's bothering you, how much it's hurting you, man. And I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. Now, you know where I stand now. Now, the rest of this is between you and her. Now, I don't get into all that old mushy stuff. And I ain't finna get into y'all's. But you know where I stand now. It's not an issue with me anymore. I move on when I say I'm done, and I'm done. You'll never hear her say another word about me saying anything out of the way or nothing. That's that on that." So the big homie, he put his hand out to shake Scotty's hand to signify that they had an understanding and this was going to be peaceful. Scotty put his hands out and they shook hands. And the big homie pulled him close to him and he embraced him. He said, look, homie, I understand I crossed the line, but that'll never happen again. And he pushed him back up off of him because, the big homie was a little older than Scotty. He pushed him back up off of him. He put his hands on both his shoulders and he said, look at me. He said, look at me. This will be the first and the last time that you see me telling you something like what I'm about to tell you. He said, I see you're a real dude. And I wouldn't dare do that to you. I don't want to hurt you or her. Anybody that's got the nerve to do what you did to set up something like what you set up and then call me in and let me participate into it, I ain't got no business to crossing you out and letting nobody else cross you out. You're one of the realest I've ever met. And I appreciate everything that you're doing for me, and I'm going to make sure that everything works out between you and her. At the minimum, it ain't going to have, if you do decide to walk away from her, it ain't going to have nothing to do with me, because I'm letting you know right now, it ain't nothing. So your issue is with her, and I recommend to you, little homie, fix that. Get over that. Grow you some nuts and grow up. Stuff happens, man. She slipped up. Just like I slipped up. You forgive her and you move on. Man. So Scotty looked at him, nodded his head. He couldn't say nothing. He was speechless. He had a frog in his throat. Couldn't get a word out of his mouth. Because the big homie never talked to him like this. It sounded like he was talking to him as a father, as a friend, and not as a head of the org. So the big homie walked out. He saw Rachel looking at him. He nodded his head at her and he walked on up the stairs. Rachel sitting at the desk, she's watching the door. She couldn't focus on doing anything else but watching the cell door, waiting and hoping that Scotty would walk out. 1 hour goes by, 2 hours go by, 3 hours go by. He hadn't come out. Lockdown. She walks by lockdown. She looks in the cell. He's turned toward the wall with the blanket over his head. She taps on the glass of the door. Let me see your face, inmate. That's what she has to say to everybody. But he knew what she was trying to do, so he don't even move. He lays there, and she went on to the next cell, heartbroken, not even understanding the pain that he was going through, and he didn't want to even understand the pain that she was going through, but she knew she loved this man. She knew she loved him. So when she finished the count and cleared the count, she unlocked all the doors, and she went by and she said, Scotty. He didn't move. She said, Scotty. He could hear in her voice that she was panicking. So he rolled over and he said, what is it? She said, come and talk to me. And he could tell by the look on her eyes that she had been crying. So he raised up. And he said, I'll be out there in a few. And he could see that her eyes lit up with happiness. She walked back to the desk and she sat there, drying her eyes. She didn't care who was watching at this point. She was caught up in him. He walked out to the desk and he said, what is it? She said, I'm sorry. And she said, please forgive me. He said, I'll forgive you. She said, you need to forgive me now before I go home. She said, I can't take this. I can't. She said, I didn't want to do this, but I came to work here so I could be around you. And I don't think I can stay working here if you don't want to be with me. So he thought about what she said. And he said, I don't want you to leave. She said, I'm not going to leave unless you don't want me. If you don't want me, I'm not going to be out here. I'm not staying out here. I'll go back to my life and doing something else. But I'm not going to stay out here. And she said, tell me now. Because when I leave tonight, if you don't tell me, I'm not coming back. So he looked at her and he said, I don't want you to leave either. But I'm going through it right now. And she said, look at me, I'm going through it too. I'm going through it too. And he said, I know. And she said, stop doing this to me. Tell me you forgive me. Because if you tell me, I know you mean it. He stood there and he looked at her for a while. And then a smile came across his face. And she said, what are you smiling about? He said, I just looked at you and I just saw you different for the first time. See, I was looking at you in a way to where that I could use you and manipulate you. And now I see a woman. I see somebody that would hold me down no matter what. So see, I was manipulating and using you when I got you to go and tell your friend at the IHOP to let me work a couple of days a week. I know you didn't want to do it, but you did it for me. And then when I convinced you to come work here, I know you did it for me, but I was manipulating and using you because I wanted you here. But I see now that you were doing all that because you really love me. And he said, I just realized that. I had to do something to get hurt before I realized how special you are to me. And she looked at him and she said, you're special to me too. He said, look here, I'll tell you what. I'm going to wait to see what the news I get is about my appeal from my lawyer. And if it's good news, I want you to quit. If it's bad news, I want you to stay. She said, well, why would you want me to quit if it's good news? And if it's bad news, you want me to stay? He said, because if it's good news, I'm coming home and you can wait. If it's bad news, I don't think I can do without seeing you, so you need to stay. So she started laughing. She said, there you go being selfish. He said, I love you too much. I love you too much to let you go. And she said, you don't have to let me go. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be with you and only you. She said, you don't have to worry about none of these guys in here ever again. That is not going to happen. But I don't know how we're going to be able to do what we did before if you don't have a lookout. He said, well, the big homie, he'll look out, but he won't be in the room no more. I'm going to make sure of that. He can stand outside the door. And she said, I don't listen to you. And then that's when she realized that he was being the man that she wanted him to be now. Strong, assertive, sure of himself. He was that guy now. And that's what she wanted. She wanted that guy. She had to go to prison to learn that she liked it rough and rugged. She liked that type of dude. And now Scotty was being that type of dude. Yeah, she wanted him to get out and go straight and keep his life straight. But she wanted him to be a man, somebody that she could feel like they could protect her without all of the nonsense. And he was showing her that he could do that. And it was a few weeks later, Scotty got his papers from the lawyer on his appeal. And his case looked like he was going to get another trial and be able to go back to court. And if he did win that, then they would be able to reinstate his probation. And that's what he was looking forward to. So when he called the lawyer, he told the lawyer to tell Rachel everything that she needed to know so that he could get a better understanding about what's going on. And the lawyer told her everything. And he said it was a real good possibility that this case would get tossed. So that's how this story ends, y'all. That's how this story ends. I don't know if the case got tossed. I haven't seen him since. But what I do know is that she was willing to do whatever it took to be near her man, even working in the prison. Imagine that. The things we do for love. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.